Oh, hi there. I am so excited you're back. I was just picking up my copy of Willa of the Wood to get started reading again. I'm glad to be back reading with you and hope you have your copy ready. We're going to start today on chapter 9, and in my copy, it starts on page 42. When the man finally turned and headed in a different direction, Willa thought, "Yes, go. Take your killing stick and your hatred away from here." Luthien's hackles lowered, and Willa sunk back down into the water. The bears, too, returned to their wallowing in the nearby shallows as the white bear watched over them. She liked how the white bear was older and stronger than the other bears, but he was serving them, helping them, protecting them. Her mama had told her stories about how it had once been the same with the Baron, with all the members of the clan would work together, protect each other, take care of each other. When the lake had finally stopped the bleeding and soothing the pain of her wounds, Willa climbed back up onto Luthien's back. "I wish I could stay here," Willa said in the old language, "but I need to get back to my clan. They're going to be looking for me." Willa noticed the white bear watching her as Luthien carried her out of the water and up onto the shore. She knew that this bear had seen so many things with those eyes, the time of the first Cherokee long ago with their skin-piercing blow darts and their spear-slinging atlas, when the homesteaders hacking their way through the wilderness with their sharpened blades and their killing sticks, and now the newcomers with their smoking metal beast. As the white bear looked at her, he seemed to be thinking, "And you see it too, don't you, little one? You understand." As Luthien and Willow rejoined the pack, the wolves circled around them in greeting, and then they all headed off together with Luthien leading the way. They traveled for several hours up into the dark realms of the great mountain, following secluded ravines along rivers that washed the stones bone gray, and up through chutes of ancient rock where once the water flowed. Willa and the wolves came to a gorge where a gigantic skeleton of a dead tree hung upside down, wedged between two rock faces, where a rushing flood had deposited it years before. Its roots reached up into the air and its branches hung down to the earth. The water had receded long ago, but the bare, gray trunk and limbs of the tree remained. Her people called it the Watcher, for it loomed over the winding path that led up through the rocky gorge to the entrance of the dead hollow lair. When Luthien came to a stop, Willa climbed reluctantly off the wolf's back. Glancing up into the gorge in the direction of her clan's lair, Willa felt sick to her stomach. She didn't want to return to her clan. She wanted to go back to the Lake of the Bears. She wanted to stay with the wolves. She wanted to do anything other than return, but she knew she couldn't. A Farron would only survive through her clan. The Padawan had told them many times, "There is no I, there is only we." She belonged to her clan, and more than anything, she had to get back to her grandmother. Her mama needed her, and she needed her mama. There is no I, only we. As the wolves of the pack gathered around her to say goodbye, she knelt down in front of Luthien. Willa knew that to be touched by a wolf was a privilege, but to actually be carried by a wolf like Luthien was an honor. Luthien had saved her life and risked her own to do it. Willa wrapped her arms around Luthien's neck and hugged her, feeling the thickness of the wolf's fur against her cheek. When Luthien nuzzled up against her, Willa knew the wolf understood. Willa felt the loyalty towards her that she vowed to remember. "I will never forget what you've done for me, Luthien," Willa said in the old language. "May your pack run strong." In the moments that followed, she watched Luthien and other wolves turn and slowly disappear into the forest. When they were finally gone, she felt a lurch of loneliness in her chest. She didn't want to be left behind. She wanted to cry out to them, to raise her head up and howl for them to come back to her. As she turned and looked towards the path that would take her back to Dead Hollow, the lair of the clan into which she had been born, she felt a lump of dark fear growing like black roots in the pit of her stomach. Before she went home, there was one more thing she had to do. When the Jaders went out thieving each night, they usually went out in small groups to keep an eye on one another, a rule the Padawan had established long before she was born. Nothing in the clan was ever done alone, but more and more she'd been sneaking out by herself, and the other Jaders didn't like it. They often lay in wait for her return. She looked around at the surrounding forest to make sure she was alone, then went over to the Watcher, the tree wedged upside down in the gorge. She grabbed on to the lowest branches and started climbing, wincing from the pain in her shoulder. She knew that the movement of climbing might tear open the wound that the lake had soothed and begun to heal, but she had no choice. She scaled the branches hand over hand, following the tree all the way up until she came to a large oblong hole that had been dug into the tree. Looking down inside the cavity, she saw the tiny, sharply angled faces of 5 baby-plated woodpeckers looking up at her. "How are you this morning, my little ones?" she whispered. But it was a careless mistake. As soon as she said hello, all the babies started squawking and cackling, excited to see her. "Shh, shh, shh," she whispered. "Just soft now. Don't give me away. I need you to hold on to something for me." But as she pulled the satchel off her shoulder, the mother woodpecker came flying in with a burst of black and white feathers and clung to the trunk of the tree with her powerful claws. Willa was startled to see that something had happened to her since she saw her last. The area around her left eye was bleeding, and her wing was bent badly, crumpled close to her body. It was a wonder she could fly at all. "Come here," Willa said, clinging to the tree with her legs as she reached out and took the crow-sized bird into her hands. "Let me look at you." The woodpecker knew she was trying to help her and did not fight her or try to fly away. A tangle of fibrous twine had wrapped tightly around the wing and body of the bird, biting cruelly at her skin and binding her movement. But as Willa investigated more closely, she could see that it wasn't just bits of string, it was pieces of a net of some kind. "Oh my! Who did this to you?" Willa said as she carefully unwrapped the bird's wing from the twisted fragments. It would have taken days to kill her, but the woodpecker would not have survived this, nor would her starving babies. "You must have fought very hard to get out of this net," Willa said, the woodpecker watching her with its rapidly blinking eyes as she worked. "There you go. You're all clear now. I hope you feel better." The woodpecker bobbed its head, then tended to her babies. Why would someone be using a net in the forest? Willa wondered. Is this some kind of cruel new weapon or trap the day folk are using? Knowing that she needed to get back to what she'd come for, Willa scanned the area below her one last time to make sure no one was watching. Then she stuffed her satchel into the cavity with the baby woodpeckers, careful not to block them or hurt them in any way. "I know it's crowded in there," she told the little ones, "but I'll be back for it very soon. Don't worry." Hiding valuables in trees was a trick she and her sister had learned from playing games with the ravens years before. But Willa was pleased with her cleverness. Even the mighty ravens wouldn't think of using an occupied woodpecker hole as a hiding spot. What she was bringing back to the lair in her satchel was a good take, something she should be proud of. But she knew she was too tired to defend it with the Gredic and her other Jader rivals. As she climbed down the tree and the sunlight peeked into the gorge, her gut tightening with worry. As the sun was already in the ravine, that meant it was late in the morning. The Padawan was going to be angry that she'd been gone all night and that she wasn't at the morning gathering. The other Jaders would come looking for her, sensing her weakness. She had to get back to the lair as soon as she could. "What are you doing?" came a hissing voice from behind her as soon as she stepped foot on the ground. The quills on the back of Willa's neck went straight up as she spun around to defend herself. 4 jaders surrounded her with their long sticks. "Don't try to get away, Willa," Greta hissed in the English words, the only language he knew, as he shoved her hard up against the rocky wall of the ravine. Years before, she and Greta had been initiated into the Jedders at the same time, but she was a year older than her, and at least 6 inches taller than her now, with clawed, grasping fingers and slimy, molted gray skin. Like most of the Farren of her clan, Grettig's skin didn't change color to match his surroundings. Blending or weaving, as her mama called it, was a fading remnant of the past that had been dying out of her clan. Her mother, father, sister, and mama had it, and she had it. It ran strong in families, but few of the other Farren had the ability, and the young Jaders of her clan never let her forget how different she was from the rest of them. "Look at her, she's going all stony brown," Grettig's twin brother chid her as he pushed her against the stone. "Let's make her face change color too." His name was Cedric, and he was the largest and most brutal of the Jaders. The crooked nose and crushed cheekbones of Cedric's mangled face were remnants of the savage fight the year before that defeated his brother's rival and put Grettig in charge of the Jaders. But it was the nasty Kiernan and his brother Ninric who scared Willa the most. "I think you're frightening her." Kiernan rasped in snarling, fidgeting pleasure from behind the other 2 Jaders as he wiped his nose with the back of his gnarled hand. Kiernan and his brother were sniveling creatures with black, needy eyes that oozed a sticky, sap-like substance. Fascinated with everything Grettig did, they liked to watch whether he was pulling the wings of a sparrow or pinning Willa against a rock and making her twist in pain. Willa squirmed and tried to yank away, but Grettig gripped her arm with his clenching hands. It had always frustrated her that he was so much stronger than her. "Where's your satchel, Willa?" he hissed, leaning his face so close to her that his foul-smelling breath crept into her nose like leeches. Yes, where's your satchel?" Kieran rasped from behind him, always repeating Grettig's words. "Are you scared, Willa?" Grettig whispered into her face. "Can you feel your heart beating and your blood pumping?" "Let's take her blood," Kieran shrieked. "She's already bleeding," Cedric said, jabbing his stick at the wound on her back as his brother held her. Grettig wrenched her around by the arm and looked at her. "You're hurt," he said in surprise, his eyes narrowing at her suspiciously. "The little beastie is hurt," Kieran hissed. When Grettig dug his probing fingers into the bloody wound, it sent sharp bolts of pain rolling through her back. She tried to squirm away from him, but he gripped her arm even tighter and shook her. "Where did you go, Willa? Tell me." "Leave me alone," she said as she tried to pull away from him, but he held her tight and his voice went quiet as he pushed against her. "What did you do, Willa?" he whispered. "What are you hiding?" Grettig was far smarter than the other Jaders, and she could hear the fear seeping into his voice. He often used his anger as his power, shouting at her and the other Jaders to get what he wanted. But just as often, he was kind to her, almost gentle with her when he felt sorry for her or was helping her when his power was secure. But his kindness vanished when he thought she was slipping away from him in some way or getting an edge on him. He knew that this wound was from a different place, meant that wherever she had gone that night, whatever she had done it without him. And this he would not allow. She and Grettig had gone through the starving night and beating blows of the Jader initiation together. And in the years since, when the Jaders went out thieving, he had made sure the 2 of them were in the same group. "There is no I, only we." Gretick yanked her around to face him again and pressed her back against the wall with a harsh shove. "Tell me what you did," he demanded again, crushing her with his weight as he slipped his long, bony hands tightly around her neck. We'll stop there for today, and next time pick up with chapter 11. I was excited to see you today and can't wait to be back with you again.